I'm getting married next month, and I apparently am the one who invited the people that ruined my sister's life, so I guess I should start there because everyone keeps telling me that's the part that makes me the beach. Also, English is not my first language, and I only started properly learning this year because my fiancé and I are going to Japan for our honeymoon, and I didn't want to be the only person who couldn't order food or read signs. So if this sounds weird or clumsy, I'm sorry, I'm still practicing. Anyway, my sister Claire is 26, I'm 23. We've always had kind of an okay relationship, but not the kind where we tell each other everything. The age gap makes it strange sometimes. When I was still in school, she had already moved out with her boyfriend Tim. They were together 7 years total. Married 4. They have a little girl who just turned 1 in spring. For most of that time, I actually saw Tim more than I saw my sister because Claire worked late a lot and Tim would come to family things alone or with the baby. We were close in a normal way, like he was the brother-in-law who helps fix your car or brings you coffee when you're studying. Nothing weird. And Kate has been my best friend since we were 5. Same kindergarten class, same school, same everything. Our parents used to joke we'd probably end up living next door when we grew up. So when all this started, it honestly felt like my 2 separate worlds crashed into each other. Back in May, Claire found out Tim had been having an affair. Not just some random person. Kate, for 2 years. When it came out, it was, honestly, horrible. Like weeks of fighting and crying and people yelling in my parents' house. My sister is screaming that Kate ruined her family. Kate crying and trying to explain something about falling in love. Tim just looked exhausted all the time, like he'd already checked out of the situation. I remember the night Claire found out because she showed up at my apartment at almost midnight, still in her work clothes, and she just sat on my couch and kept saying 2 years, 2 whole years, over and over again like she couldn't make it make sense. I was angry too. Obviously. I yelled at Kate. I told her what she did was disgusting, and I didn't speak to her for almost 6 weeks. But things get complicated when someone has been in your life literally forever. In July, she messaged me asking if we could meet for coffee. I almost said no, but I went anyway because I thought maybe she wanted to apologize or explain. She did apologize. A lot, actually. But the weird part was that she also looked calmer than I expected. Not proud exactly, but not broken either. She said she knew everyone hated her but that she and Tim weren't planning anything when it started and that they tried to stop seeing each other several times and couldn't. She said they didn't mean to hurt Claire like this and that the baby was the part she felt worst about. I told her that wasn't really something you get to accidentally do for 2 years, but we kept talking. And over the next few weeks we saw each other again a couple times, once just walking around the park, once at her apartment. Tim was there one of those times. It was awkward at first, but also strange because they looked normal together, like a regular couple cooking dinner and arguing about what movie to watch. I know that sounds awful, but it did make my brain start doing that thing where you try to make everything fit together logically. Like, Claire and Tim had been fighting for a long time, even before this. I remember Christmas 2 years ago when Claire left dinner early because they got into some argument about daycare costs, and Tim ended up sitting with my dad in the garage for an hour drinking beer and not talking. And there was another time at my birthday where Claire snapped at him because he forgot the nappy bag, and she told him he was useless in front of everyone. I remember Kate giving me a look across the table like, yikes. So I guess part of me thought maybe their marriage had already been falling apart. I'm not saying that excuses anything, I know it doesn't. But people don't usually blow up their whole lives for no reason either. Anyway, around that time my wedding planning was getting serious and I had to finalize the guest list. Originally both Claire and Tim were obviously invited. He's been in the family 7 years. My fiancé actually likes him a lot. When the divorce started, it got awkward because technically Tim was still my brother-in-law, but also the reason my sister was crying every day. I spent a lot of nights staring at that guest list document feeling like whichever decision I made would make someone furious. My fiancé kept saying the same thing. It's your day. Invite the people you want. Which sounds simple but isn't really when your family is involved. Eventually, I decided I wasn't going to choose sides. That felt wrong. Claire would obviously be there because she's my sister. Her daughter is supposed to be the flower girl. But Tim had been part of my life for years too, and Kate is basically family to me even if my actual family doesn't feel that way right now, so I invited them. My logic, maybe stupid logic, was that adults should be able to be civil for one day, especially since Claire and Tim are going to have to deal with each other forever anyway because of the baby. They can't pretend the other person doesn't exist. I honestly thought maybe a wedding environment would make everyone behave. Like how people act nicer at funerals or graduations because it's not about them. When I told Kate, She looked nervous, but she said she understood if Claire didn't want to talk to her. When I told Claire, well, I didn't exactly tell her right away. I know people are probably already judging me for that, but every time I tried to bring it up, she was already stressed or angry or complaining about lawyers and custody stuff. Also, she's pregnant again, which makes everything more emotional. She's 8 months now. Eventually, the truth came out anyway because my mom mentioned the seating chart during Sunday lunch, and Claire immediately asked where Tim was sitting, and that's when the entire table went silent. Claire looked at me like she was waiting for a joke. When I said yes, he's invited, she just stared for like 5 seconds and then asked if I was serious. I tried explaining the whole everyone has to coexist eventually thing. She didn't yell that time. She just said okay in a very flat voice and left early. My mom later told me I should have talked to Claire privately before sending the invitations. Maybe that's true, but by then the invitations were already printed and sent. The next couple weeks were tense, but nothing exploded yet. Claire stopped asking about wedding stuff though. She used to be really involved in helping with dresses and decorations, and suddenly she wasn't answering those messages anymore. I figured she just needed time. Then last Friday we had the bridal fitting. It was supposed to be simple. Me, Claire, my mum, Kate, and 2 bridesmaids. Claire arrived first. She looked tired, but that's pretty normal right now because pregnancy is killing her sleep apparently. Then, about 15 minutes later, Kate walked in. And the second Claire saw her standing there with the garment bag, everything just snapped. Claire's face went completely red, and she said something like, "What the hell is she doing here?" Kate immediately started apologizing. She said she just wanted to talk and maybe clear the air because the wedding was coming up. That was the worst possible thing she could have said. Claire laughed in this short, angry way and called her a nitty. I don't even know what that means, but it sounded bad. And then she turned to me and asked what kind of game I was playing, bringing them into the same room. Kate was crying now and trying to explain again that she never meant to hurt anyone. Claire just told her to duck off. Then she grabbed her bag and walked out of the shop. The whole place just went quiet in that uncomfortable way where nobody knows if they should say something or pretend nothing happened. Kate was still crying, not loudly, just that kind where she keeps wiping her face and saying sorry over and over like it's automatic. My mum looked at me like she wanted to say something but also didn't want to make it worse. One of my bridesmaids asked if we should go after Claire, but the door had already slammed, and through the window I could see her getting into her car. I remember standing there in my half-pin dress thinking this was all ridiculous, like it felt so unnecessary. It was supposed to be a dress fitting, not a war zone. Kate kept saying she just wanted to talk to Claire properly at least once because she hates that the last conversation they had was basically screaming. I told her maybe this wasn't the best moment to try, which, looking back, is probably obvious to everyone except the 2 of us, apparently. We tried to continue the fitting after that, but the mood was completely off. My mom was quiet. Kate looked like she might throw up. I couldn't focus on anything the seamstress was saying about hemming and straps. After maybe 20 minutes, I just said we should finish another day. I texted Claire when I got home. Just something simple like, "Are you okay?" She didn't answer. Then later that night, she sent a long message. Not yelling exactly. Claire doesn't text like that. It was more cold. She said she wasn't coming to the wedding. Not her, not her daughter, no flower girl. She said she couldn't sit in the same room as the woman who destroyed her marriage while everyone pretended it was normal. I tried calling, but she didn't answer, so I drove to her apartment the next morning because I figured this would calm down once we talked face to face. Claire opened the door still in pajamas and looked like she hadn't slept. The first thing she said was, "Did you come to convince me again that I should play nice?" I told her that wasn't what I meant. I just wanted us to talk because she's my sister and I want her there. That's when she got angry properly. She started listing things I apparently didn't understand, like how Tim had been lying to her for 2 years while she was pregnant, how Kate came to the baby shower smiling and hugging her like nothing was wrong. I actually didn't know that part before. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said the worst part wasn't even Tim leaving. It was that it felt like the whole world expected her to move on immediately because technically no one died. She said everyone keeps telling her to be mature, be civil, think about the baby, and think about the future. But nobody seems to care that she's still in the middle of it. I tried explaining again that the wedding isn't about Tim or Kate, it's about me. One day when I just want things peaceful. That did not go well. Claire asked me if I would invite someone who slept with my fiancé just because they'd been friends a long time. I said that's not really the same situation. She laughed again in that sharp way she did at the dress shop. Then she said something I honestly didn't expect. She said if I'm choosing Kate and Tim to be there, that's my decision, but she won't be part of it. And if the rest of the family decides to go to the wedding anyway, she'll remember that too. At first, I thought she was just talking emotionally. But apparently, she meant it. Because by Sunday, my aunt called, asking if the rumors were true that Claire wasn't attending. Then my cousin messaged saying, Claire told everyone they have to choose between supporting her or supporting my wedding. I wish I were exaggerating, but that's literally the phrase she used. Choose. My parents are stuck in the middle, which is probably the worst position. My dad thinks Claire is acting dramatic, but also keeps saying she's pregnant and under stress, so we should be careful. My mom told me maybe I should reconsider inviting Kate. When she said that, I immediately felt defensive. Because that means I'm the one who has to cut someone out when technically I didn't cheat on anyone. Kate didn't force Tim either. I know people hate hearing that, but relationships involve two people. Anyway, the situation got even messier a couple days later when Tim found out what happened. And that part actually shocked me. Because he was furious. Not at Claire, at me and Kate. Apparently Kate told him she was hoping to talk to Claire during the wedding events and maybe apologize properly and try to start fixing things for the sake of the kids eventually. Tim said that was an unbelievably stupid idea. He called me and said I had no right putting Claire in that position, especially when she's 8 months pregnant and already stressed about custody. Then he said something else I didn't expect. He said if he had known Kate planned to confront Claire at my wedding, he wouldn't have agreed to come, which kind of made me feel like everyone was blaming me for something I didn't even organize. Now, the situation is basically this. Claire refuses to attend. She says her daughter won't be the flower girl anymore. Several family members are supporting her. Some of my fiance's relatives heard about it and are asking if there's going to be drama at the wedding. Kate keeps saying she'll stay home if that would fix things. But I know she's also hurt because she thought we had moved past the worst of it. And honestly, I'm starting to feel like I'm the villain in a story that I didn't even start. I didn't have the affair. I didn't end the marriage. I just didn't want to cut people out of my life completely. But now, it feels like the entire wedding is turning into some kind of loyalty test. Yesterday, my younger brother called and said Claire told him if he attends the wedding, she won't speak to him anymore. He said he's not sure what to do because he loves me, but Claire is his closest sibling, and she's clearly not okay. Then even my future mother-in-law asked me if inviting Tim and Kate was really worth this much chaos, which made me feel terrible because now it looks like I'm creating problems for two families instead of one. At this point, I honestly don't know what the right answer even is anymore. If I uninvite Kate and Tim, it feels like I'm punishing them forever and admitting my sister gets to control my wedding. But if I don't, there's a very real chance my own sister and niece won't be there, and half my family might stay home with her. All I wanted was one day where people could act like adults and put their personal issues aside for a few hours. But apparently, that was a lot more unrealistic than I thought. Continuation. I didn't expect to come back this soon, but things have gotten a lot worse since my last post, and a lot of people asked what ended up happening. I'm honestly not even sure how to organize this because it all kind of piled up over the last 2 weeks. First, I want to say I did try to compromise. I know a lot of people think I'm just stubborn, but I really thought if I could manage the situation better, it would calm everyone down. The first thing I tried was adjusting the wedding logistics. I spoke to our planner and basically asked if we could arrange things so certain people didn't have to interact, like Claire sitting with my family near the front during the ceremony and Kate and Tim sitting farther back with friends. Then for the reception, we could seat them on opposite sides of the room. I even asked about staggering arrival times so they wouldn't run into each other walking in. I know that sounds clinical, but I genuinely thought if the situation was controlled enough, it would avoid drama. Apparently that idea made things worse. My mom told Claire about it because she thought it might reassure her that she wouldn't have to see Kate at all. Claire absolutely lost it. She said I was turning the whole thing into a cheating containment strategy, instead of just respecting the fact that she doesn't want the woman who slept with her husband at her sister's wedding. So that plan died pretty quickly. After that, I tried something else which, in hindsight, maybe sounded bad. I told Claire that if she was uncomfortable being around Kate the whole evening, she could still come to the ceremony and then leave before the reception started. I explained that the ceremony is the most important part anyway, and that way she could still support me without being stuck in a room with Kate all night. I honestly thought it sounded like a middle ground. She said I was asking her to show up for the public photos and then quietly disappear so my friend could enjoy the party. She hung up on me after that. Around this time, I also talked to Kate again because she kept asking what she could do to make things easier. I told her if she still planned to attend, maybe it would help if she kept a low profile. Like no speeches, maybe avoid being in too many photos, and just try not to draw attention. Kate agreed, but she sounded hurt. I didn't realize she had vented about that conversation to a mutual friend, and somehow that friend repeated it to Claire. So now Claire thinks I'm trying to smuggle Kate into the wedding while asking everyone else to pretend she isn't there. Another thing I tried, and this is probably where I messed up again, was asking Claire if she would at least still let my niece be the flower girl. That part of the wedding means a lot to me, and I've been talking about it for months. I told her she didn't even have to stay for the ceremony if she didn't want to, but it would really mean a lot if she could just bring her daughter for the flower girl part. Claire said absolutely not. She said she's not bringing her child into a room with Kate and Tim. Then she asked me why I care more about a cute moment walking down the aisle than about her being able to heal. We argued again, and she eventually said something like, "You keep talking about maturity, but you don't seem to understand what betrayal actually feels like." That conversation didn't go anywhere. My mom eventually tried to mediate between us. She suggested something that honestly surprised me. Her idea was that Kate and Tim shouldn't come to the wedding at all, but that I could celebrate with them privately another time, like dinner or something after the honeymoon. I refused that idea because at that point it felt like letting Claire control the guest list completely, which might sound petty, but this is still my wedding. When I told my mom that, she got really frustrated and said I was turning the wedding into a loyalty test. Not long after that, I got a call from Tim. Apparently, he found out Kate had been hoping to use the wedding as a chance to apologize properly to Claire. He was furious. He said the wedding is the worst possible place for that conversation, and that Claire is already under enough pressure with the pregnancy and custody discussions. Then he said, if he had known the wedding might turn into some kind of confrontation, he would never have agreed to come in the first place. He told me he's not attending anymore because he doesn't want to make things worse for Claire, so now Tim isn't coming. Kate said she still would come if I wanted her there, but even that situation got complicated, because without me knowing, she sent Claire a long message trying to apologize. She said she hoped someday the kids could grow up around each other peacefully, and that she never wanted Claire to feel like she lost everything. Claire took screenshots of the message and sent them to a bunch of family members. People started messaging me asking if Kate was talking about some kind of future blended family situation. It looked really bad. Things were already tense when something else happened that I genuinely didn't expect to become such a big deal. A few days ago, Kate came over to my apartment and we were talking about everything. I was frustrated and I said something like, maybe if she hadn't kept the relationship with Tim hidden for so long, people wouldn't feel so blindsided now. She said they hid it because they were terrified of exactly this reaction. I told her maybe she should have told Claire sooner instead of letting her find out accidentally. While we were talking, my parents arrived earlier than expected because they were dropping off some decorations my mom had picked up. They ended up overhearing part of the conversation, specifically the part where Kate said she used to come to family gatherings pretending everything was normal while the affair was already happening. My dad asked what she meant by that, and before I could stop the conversation, Kate admitted that I had known something was going on before Claire officially found out, not the full details. But I suspected something between her and Tim months earlier and told her she needed to figure it out before someone got hurt. I didn't think that counted as knowing about the affair. But my parents saw it very differently. My mom immediately asked why I never told Claire. I said because it wasn't my place to interfere in someone else's marriage. My dad said if I suspected my best friend was sleeping with my sister's husband, then it absolutely was my place. They left pretty quickly after that, and later that evening Claire called me. Apparently, my parents told her everything. She was furious. Not the screaming kind of furious like at the dress shop. The kind where someone talks very slowly because they're so angry they're holding it in. She started listing things she suddenly reinterpreted. Times Kate came to family dinners. Times I defended her when people started suspecting something. The baby shower. Christmas. She said she felt like she was the only person in the room who didn't know what was happening. She asked me if I understood how humiliating that felt. Then she said the affair hurt, but realizing people around her suspected something and stayed quiet hurt even more. By the end of that conversation, she said she's done trying to fix anything with me, and apparently she wasn't the only one. Since then, several relatives have told me they're not coming to the wedding anymore. My parents said they're not sure they can attend after everything that came out. My fiance's parents heard about the situation, and they're worried the wedding might turn into some kind of family confrontation. Last night, my fiance sat me down and said, maybe we should pause the wedding planning for a while until things calm down. So now the wedding that was supposed to happen in a few weeks might not even happen at all. and somehow I've gone from trying to keep everyone included to being the reason both families are questioning the entire event. I honestly don't even know what the next step is supposed to be. Continuation. A lot of people said that I should apologize and try to repair things with Claire instead of focusing on the wedding itself. I want to say I did try to fix things, maybe not in the exact way everyone wanted, but I really did try to clear the air. The biggest thing I did was organize a family meeting. My thought process was that too many people were hearing pieces of the story from different sides and assuming the worst about me. Especially after my parents overheard that conversation with Kate and told Claire that I suspected something about the affair months before it came out. So I thought if everyone could sit down in the same room and hear my side properly, it might stop the rumors and misunderstandings. I asked my parents if we could do it at their house because it's the only place big enough for everyone. They weren't very enthusiastic, but eventually they agreed. It ended up being my parents, my brother, two of my aunts, one cousin, Claire, and me. Kate wasn't there. I knew bringing her would make things worse. When everyone arrived, the atmosphere was already tense. Claire looked exhausted and very pregnant. She didn't even sit near me at the table. I started by explaining that I never knew about the affair in the way everyone is saying. What I said was that I had suspicions at one point because Kate and Tim were acting strangely around each other last year, but I didn't have proof of anything. I told Kate that if something were going on, she needed to sort it out before it destroyed people's lives. That's literally all I said to her at the time, but Claire immediately interrupted and said that's exactly the problem. She said if I suspected something between my best friend and her husband, then the first person I should have warned was her. I tried explaining that I didn't want to interfere in someone else's marriage without actual proof, because that could have destroyed things even if I was wrong. That's when my aunt asked why I defended Kate so strongly after the affair came out. I said because people were acting like she was some evil villain when relationships are usually more complicated than that. That comment did not land well. Claire asked me if I realized how insane it sounded to say her marriage breakdown was complicated in front of her while she was 8 months pregnant and about to give birth alone. She said she already felt humiliated by the affair itself, but realizing that people around her suspected something and never warned her makes her feel like a complete idiot. At that point, the conversation stopped being a calm discussion and turned into everyone arguing over each other. My brother asked why I was still trying to invite Kate to the wedding after everything. One of my aunts said if someone slept with her sister's husband, she would never speak to that person again. Claire kept repeating that she doesn't understand how I can see Kate as family after what happened. I tried explaining again that Kate has been my best friend since we were 5 years old, and cutting her out of my life completely isn't something I can do overnight. Claire responded that apparently cutting your sister out is easier. That meeting ended with several people just standing up and leaving. My parents later told me they hoped the conversation would lead to some kind of apology or reconciliation, but instead it sounded like I was trying to defend my choices. Maybe that's true. But I honestly feel like no matter what I say, people have already decided what kind of person I am. Things got worse after that meeting because Claire started telling relatives exactly what I said about her marriage being unhappy. Apparently that lie spread through the family very quickly. I got several messages from relatives asking if I actually told Claire she should be grateful Tim left now instead of wasting 10 more years in a bad marriage. That's not exactly what I said. What I said was that sometimes relationships break down and it's better to find out sooner rather than later. But Claire interpreted that as me saying the affair did her a favor. Now that version is the one everyone believes. Around the same time, Tim contacted me again. This conversation was very different from the last one. Before, he was mostly concerned about the wedding drama turning into a confrontation. This time, he sounded angry. He said, the conflict between me and Claire is now making the custody situation much worse because Claire is refusing to cooperate with him about visitation for their daughter. He said every conversation they have now somehow turns back to the wedding and how he and Kate ruined the family. He told me that whether I intended it or not, the wedding situation has become another weapon in their divorce. I said that's not fair because I didn't start their affair or their breakup. Tim said that might be true, but continuing to involve Kate in everything is making it impossible for Claire to move forward. We ended that call without really resolving anything. After that, I started feeling like everyone was talking about me behind my back and assuming the worst. So I made a post online. It wasn't naming anyone directly, but I wrote something about how it's painful when people expect you to pick sides in situations that weren't your fault, and how sometimes refusing to hate someone makes you the villain in other people's stories. I thought it was a reasonable way to express how I felt. Apparently, that was another mistake. Several relatives immediately messaged me asking if that post was about Claire. She saw it too. She told my parents that I'm now publicly portraying her as unreasonable for not attending the wedding. My parents were very upset about that. They said even if I didn't name her, everyone in the family knows exactly what the situation is, and it looks like I'm airing private family issues online. Then things started affecting my relationship with my fiancé. Up until this point, he had mostly been supportive of me, even if he was uncomfortable with the situation. But after the family meeting and the social media post, he started asking questions. He asked why I stayed so close to Kate after the affair came out. He asked why I didn't warn Claire when I first suspected something. And he asked why every attempt to fix the situation seems to end with more people distancing themselves from me. We had a long conversation about it, and he eventually said something that was really hurtful to hear. He said he's starting to worry about marrying someone who handles conflict this way. That was the first time the wedding itself became uncertain. A few days later, he told me maybe we should postpone things until the family situation calms down. I didn't want to do that because postponing would mean losing deposits and explaining everything to guests. But he said getting married while both families are fighting like this doesn't feel right. At the moment, the wedding is basically canceled. Not officially forever, but definitely not happening on the original date. And the worst part is that no one in my family seems particularly upset about that. Around this time, Kate reached out again. She said she knows the situation has gotten out of control, and she feels responsible for starting the chain reaction. She offered to stay completely away from the wedding, and even from me for a while, if it would help repair things with my family. She also said she would show up and defend me if people were accusing me of helping hide the affair. I told her not to do that. At this point, any involvement from her just makes everything worse. So I've been keeping some distance from Kate even though she keeps saying she wants to support me. Then something happened that honestly felt like the final confirmation that I'm completely on the outside of my own family. Claire went into labor earlier than expected. I didn't know. No one told me. I only found out because a cousin posted something vague about being excited to meet the new baby. When I called my mom, she confirmed that Claire had already given birth. Most of the family had been at the hospital or visiting her afterwards. I asked why no one told me. My mom said they didn't want to stress Claire while she was in labor or recovering. Later I asked him the same question, and he said the exact same thing. They didn't want to create additional stress for Claire during such an important moment, so the entire family met the new baby, and I wasn't even aware it was happening. When I asked my parents if they really think I'm that harmful to have around, they said the situation between me and Claire is still too raw, and they didn't want the hospital to turn into another confrontation. Now I'm sitting here realizing that in the span of a few weeks, I've managed to lose my wedding, distance myself from my best friend, and become someone my own family doesn't even want around during major life events. And the strangest part is that I still feel like I didn't actually do the thing everyone is blaming me for. I didn't have the affair, I didn't end the marriage, but somehow I'm the one everyone has decided to cut out. Analysis. The villain in this story isn't Kate, it isn't Tim, it isn't even Claire, it's the narrator, and the reason is not the affair, it's something much more uncomfortable. It's loyalty failure combined with moral cowardice. Let's break it down. First, the affair itself. Yes, the affair is horrible. No one is defending that. Tim betrayed his wife, Kate knowingly entered a relationship with a married man, and Claire's anger is completely justified. But those two people already took the hit. They are already the obvious wrongdoers. That part of the story is obvious. What makes this story interesting and why the narrator ended up isolated is what happened around the affair. The narrator didn't cheat, but she stood next to the cheating. And worse than that, she tried to pretend neutrality existed in a situation where neutrality is impossible. Look closely at the moment that changed everything. She admits she suspected the affair months before it was revealed. That is the turning point. When your best friend is possibly sleeping with your sister's husband, you do not get to play observer. You are not a journalist. You are not Switzerland. You are the sister. And by staying silent, she protected the wrong person. Now think about Claire's perspective. Claire went through pregnancy, marriage stress, family gatherings, holidays, and baby showers, all while the affair was happening behind her back. But the real psychological damage came later, because when the truth came out, she realized something worse. People around her had suspicions and stayed quiet. That destroys trust in a way the affair alone cannot. The affair is a betrayal by two people. Silence from the sister feels like betrayal by the entire room. Now let's talk about the narrator's biggest flaw, moral reframing. Throughout the story, she keeps doing the same thing. She takes something deeply emotional and reframes it as a logistical or philosophical issue. Claire says, "My husband and best friend betrayed me." The narrator responds, "Relationships are complicated." Claire says, "I don't want the woman who slept with my husband at the wedding." The narrator responds, "Adults should be able to coexist." Claire says, "You should have warned me." The narrator responds, "I didn't have proof." See the pattern. Every time Claire expresses pain, the narrator converts it into a debate about reasonableness. But trauma doesn't operate on reasonableness. That's why the wedding became such a disaster. To the narrator, the wedding was a neutral social event. To Claire, the wedding became a symbol of whose side the family chose, and the narrator completely failed to understand that difference. Then comes the second mistake, performative neutrality. The narrator insists she wasn't choosing sides. But actions matter more than words. Inviting the sister and the mistress to the same wedding is not neutrality. It's a choice, and it's a choice that tells the betrayed person, "Your pain is inconvenient to my plans." That's why the flower girl request hit Claire so hard. The narrator wasn't just asking for a child to walk down the aisle. She was asking Claire to bring her daughter into a room with the woman who helped destroy her family, and when Claire refused, the narrator still couldn't understand why. Now look at the third and most revealing moment, the family meeting. This was the narrator's chance to repair things. A real repair would sound like this: "I should have told you. I was scared and I made the wrong choice." Instead, what she did was defend herself. She explained, she rationalized, she reframed, and that sealed her fate. Because once people believe you care more about being right than about someone's pain, they stop trusting you completely. Finally, the ending, the birth of Claire's baby. No one told the narrator, not the parents, not the sister, not even Tim. That moment is the social verdict of the entire story. When families are in crisis, people don't exclude someone randomly. They exclude the person they believe will create emotional instability. And the family clearly decided that person was the narrator. Notice something else too. Even at the end of the story, the narrator still says, "I didn't actually do the thing everyone is blaming me for." And technically, she's right. She didn't commit the affair. But morally, she made 3 choices that destroyed trust. She stayed silent when she suspected betrayal. She protected the wrong person afterwards. And she prioritized social harmony over her sister's pain. That combination is why everyone walked away from her. Not because she cheated, but because when loyalty mattered most, she chose comfort instead.